Did you know you can lead without a title? Welcome to the Value Added Podcast. My name is Bill,
My name's Jared.
and we're going to be talking about how do you lead without a title?
Mm,
So I got an interesting story about that. Is a good illustration. Had a friend and his wife living in an apartment, and every apartment around them had people who smoked. They didn't. They weren't smokers.
mm,
It was causing breathing problems for the wife at night. And we were a young couple. They were young couples whose money was tight. So a group of us, friends, there are like four couples that were all friends together. The other three couples got together, chipped in,
mm.
and we bought an air purifier. So, and we gave it to them as a gift, just not for a birthday or Christmas, just to give them a gift, knowing that there was a need. And they set up the air purifier, and it made a huge difference. She was able to sleep and breathe and get her rest she needed. And eventually, after time, they were able to move out. So what an impact that had on them. I mean, we didn't have a title. None of us were leaders in that respect, but we made a direct impact in adding value to that person. So yeah, I think you can add be a leader without the title. You can influence other people without a title. So
So, if it's possible, right? You shared a story, an act of kindness, right, that led to you know, adding value and influence on others. How should the average person approach leading without a title? Because in my mind, job descriptions come with titles,
right.
different roles come with different titles. And so how do you approach a world that's almost title happy?
So how do we move this from an example that's personal
Right.
into some sort of organization or
Or
structured
professional
environment?
world.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
because you're looking, filling out a job description oftentimes that has a title attached right to it
That's right. Yeah.
already. So how do you lead in this sphere without a title? I think a question that I would ask, and I would encourage us all, including you and me, Bill,
Yeah.
to ask, of course, is what is my default attitude when I come across a group project? Or what is my default attitude when I have to work with a team? Right. Because often you come into a team setting and there is no leader present. You're coming into a team project and it's just that it's a team. And so usually what happens is a leader emerges in that team. And so I think the question may be for me personally, what's my default attitude? Why do I ask that? Because there's usually one of two ways to approach a team project. And one is, oh, I'm going to end up doing all the work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then the other approach is, how can I benefit this team? How can I help this team succeed? And I think it's that person who has that attitude and that approach that rises to the top.
Mm. Mm.
So I would ask, I guess, us, am I going to end up doing all the work or how can I help others thrive? Right.
That's a great question. That's a great
So
question.
to lead, especially without a title, I think our focus has to be and remain on the success of others. Right. I could say the success of the team, but it's the same thing. That will be the success of others.
Well, I've often, when I was in school, was part of a project team, and all the others would fall short, and I would end up doing all the work. And
Mhm.
my son, when he was in college, would have a similar story, but he took time to get to know some of his co laborers, fellow students, and he would learn one had three jobs, going to school at the full time, and there's always stories behind that that you just weren't aware of unless you take the time to investigate and act. And that kind of influences our attitude about it,
Right.
doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has a way of bringing it
Yeah.
down to bare
Mm.
bones.
Yeah.
So there's a difference then between managing a project and leading a team. You've talked a little bit about that. So I believe it's really the mindset and again, in our approach to entering into, this area of influencing other people and how that's going to flesh out in my mind. Am I looking at this again? Is this going to be all about what I have to do? And, am I going to be the one that gets the title at the end of the day? Right. Or are you going to approach leadership and influence in such a way where you want to help others thrive? Because I think it's that attitude that naturally brings forth a leader. I think a leader is a person who serves others.
Yeah, it's all about being intentional, helping others succeed for sure.
Mm.
Um, Great quote from John Maxwell. We'll mention him a lot on this podcast because he's such a,
Well, we're also reading him currently. So.
yeah, we're reading a book of his together at the moment. So, but he has a quote in a book called Leader Shift. In his book, Leader Shift, there are several shifts of his thinking that needed to take place for him to become a better leader as he himself went on his leadership journey.
Mm.
One of the quotes he has in this book says, good leaders do what they can to put others in a position to win.
Ooh, yeah.
So I guess we could reflect that back on ourselves and ask, what am I doing to help those on this project, this team, in this corporation, this company or
whatever the
group
case may
I'm
be.
with? What am I doing to help put them in a position to win? It's all about helping others succeed, which is imperative. Humility. It's going to be a big part of being able to do that.
Mhm.
And one of the definitions I love for humility comes from C.S. Lewis,
Mm.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that guy who wrote that series, Chronicles of Narnia. He said, humility isn't thinking less of yourself.
Mm.
It's thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
So just putting the others first more often in your thoughts than
Yeah.
you do
I think
yourself.
I think a great way to look at this is through the lens of sports.
Oh,
I have two daughters again. I mentioned before in a previous episode, and I remember this as a student as well. When you're involved in sports, beginning of the season, you're put on a team,
Mm.
and there's not a team captain picked that day. Right, a good coach, right, a good administrator in the sports world, right? They're gonna wait. They're gonna see who emerges.
Right.
And again, the what I have seen almost 9 times out of 10, it's not the loudest person, it's not the mouthiest person, it's not necessarily the one that you hear during the games yelling corrections and at people. It's the one who humbles themselves and shows up early to practice to get the gear out.
Yeah.
Right. It's the one who, someone, rolled an ankle is on the bench and it's the one who goes over that person, during the game, checking on them,
Make
and
sure they're
making
okay.
sure they're all right. And, grabbing a sweat towel for them, grabbing them some water. It's the person who is often first to practice and last to leave.
Yeah.
And it's that person that naturally ends up getting the C on the jersey, more often than not. It's also the one that takes the hits for the team.
Yeah.
When they lose a game and, that person they'll often speak singular in that moment. But then when the team does well, even if it was that person who carried the team, they always talk in the plural.
And that's a prime example of someone who thinks about himself less,
Mm-hmm.
just putting others first. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Hacksaw Ridge.
Oh, yeah.
Based on a true story, right?
World War II.
World War II, Desmond T. Doss was the man's name. And he has a quote. He says, with the world so set on tearing itself apart, it doesn't seem like such a bad thing to me to want to put a little bit of it back together. And that's just a great mindset and attitude to have when you go towards serving others and helping them to be in a position to win or move into that position to help them win. It's just unique. It's really impactful.
Yeah.
It changes lives.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think if you're finding yourself in a position where there is no clear-cut leader, you're kind of wondering, how's this going to flesh out? How's this going to work? Or, just in general, how do I become a person of better influence, right? Could ask it in either way. I think a humble state of service, and I think what that looks like is helping others to succeed and then celebrating their success, Right. I think again, we're coming at this from very much a leadership is influence definition, and we believe, a title is so secondary or third or fourth, or not even really remotely should be on the table at the current time. Right. You're a leader's not after titles. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I think bringing yourself to a humble state of serving other people, helping them succeed and then celebrating their success. Right. I think is huge for this whole idea of leading without a title.
There's an old fashioned term my parents used a lot when I was growing up and they were raising me and my sister is wanting to make sure we had good role models,
Oh yeah.
right? And having someone who's a good role model. Can you tell, Jared, why is it kind of important to have someone be a role model?
Well, I think it would be the fact that more is caught rather than taught.
Yeah. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, we have. I mean, people often respond to visual leadership initiative, and I think that's what a role model does for you. They have a way of modeling without necessarily speaking at you.
Yeah.
You're just watching what their approach is, in these various areas.
You watch them, you see how people respond to them, and that's
Yeah.
kind of inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. More is
I mean,
taught than taught.
any person who has a lot of sway and a lot of influence, almost every one of them will revert back to their first one or two or three role models in their life. They're like, well, I owe all this to so-and-so and so-and-so because I grew up watching what they were doing and then I'm trying to emulate it. Like a kid always has that person that they want to be. And then at the end of the day, a leader, a hold always has a person they look back to that they wanted to be when they were younger.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember reading a story about Mother Teresa once where she was visiting with a group of world leaders and she walked into the room and out of deference, they kind of gave her the head seat at the table. Well, why? Because she had great humility. She put others first. She thought of others more often than herself. And it really is sacrifice that builds that sense of authority that they showed that level of respect towards. And she didn't really have much of a title, did she?
No,
Other
she
than
didn't. But again, that is people responding to a leader who serves.
takes action. Yeah.
Right. So if you're a leader who takes action and serves like that, there's going to be a response from people in the room.
It's going to inspire others. They're going to take notice.
Yeah.
You're going to go, that's a role model.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's a nice quote Jared and I came across recently from Simon Sinek. He's another leadership guru that both Jared and I like. He says, leadership is not about rank or authority. Leadership is taking responsibility for the people around us.
I love this quote. It elevates it so much.
So, and I can take responsibility of someone who's a peer and help them along, right? I can take responsibility for someone who's underneath me and help them up. And I can take responsibility who someone's over me. He's like, hey, I see you're having a bad day. How are you? And how can I help? Is there anything on your plate I can take off? And, it's just a really easy way to help take responsibility. Or if you want to substitute the word serve, serve those people around us.
So, and you're doing this all without a
title.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have said before, I'll give you credit for this, that if you need a title to lead others, you're in leadership for the wrong reasons.
If you're in leadership to get all the benefits of being in leadership without knowing about all the hard work it takes and sacrifice it takes. And we said this before, leadership is about people. Another great quote from Maxwell says, the world is entirely made up of others except for one exception. It's me, I'm that one. You would be that one exception.
Exactly.
So if I'm just living for me, that's kind of a small world to live in. But if I'm helping or I'm living to help others and serve others, add value to others, that opens the universe so much larger than just me and my life and what have you.
This drives me to, because I know we're gonna kind of wrap things up by saying leaders lead no matter what job title they have, right?
Yeah.
But this leads me to a question, and this isn't even in our notes, right? So I'm going to go off the cuff here
All
for a
right.
second, just to hear your response to this. If we're talking about leadership without a title, how would we replace the word title? If I'm coming into, leadership role and I want to strive to do better and all of that stuff, that's wonderful. It's great, very
Yeah.
wonderful,
Yeah.
right? But if I'm striving after a title, my question is, how can we replace that word title? If I'm coming into a job and I want that next title, that next promotion, it's not always the greatest outlook to have as a person trying to lead. You know what I'm trying to ask?
I think so. I think you're getting
Leadership without a title. Well, how do we replace the word
How
title?
do we replace it and get people to think about?
Leadership without a title.
Well, yeah, I think the word service echoes in my head, or servant, and we don't like that word because that gives connotations of being beneath, below, slave. Unfortunately, in some areas of the world or in history, um, I would go back to humility.
Okay.
I would go back to C.S. Lewis and his definition of humility, because that's what really, well, one, it raises the value of others. And if we value others, we'll serve others. Here's another Maxwellism, right? If I see you as hurting, I'll help you. If I see you as broken, I'll fix you. If I see you as valuable, I'll serve you. Right? So, we talk about, Jared and I, when we got this podcast together, we're not necessarily looking to make money. This is not our money-making channel. This is we want to help. We want to add value. If we don't make a dime from this, we're perfectly content. We want to sow seeds, right? But if we didn't value the soil, what would be why would we bother sowing the seeds, right? It's that same aspect of that humility of others first, kind of this
So don't think title, think humble service.
humble servant,
That's what we're
caretaker, right?
caretaking.
A caretaker, a steward might be
That's a great
another
word.
word,
That's a great
steward,
word, yeah.
right? So if someone asks me to house sit for them, I'm responsible for taking care of that house, and I have the privilege to use the house,
Leaving it like you found it.
leaving it like I found it or better, but I don't own the house, right? So I think stewardship, caretaker would be other words I would replace title.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I only ask that again for just the mindset
Yeah.
aspect of it.
It is a mind shift,
It really is.
it is.
So let's look at some applications. What can we do to be intentional again, right? To level up our influence, add value to people, to lead regardless of whether we have a title or not. At the end of the day, number one, who is someone today, this week, in the near future that I can take responsibility for?
Yeah, not like you're taking responsibility for all the baggage and storms of life, but in the context of who they are in the organization, you can come alongside of and walk with, right? And how you can help carry the burden with. I mentioned one of my favorite quotes, Charles Dickens, Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens,
Yeah.
says, "No one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of it for anyone else." And that's what this question is. Who is someone this week you can take responsibility for? Who is someone this week you can just help lighten the burden? Now, I will qualify that in saying you can lighten a burden by helping them carry it, but you can also lighten the burden by helping them get stronger. And that way it becomes easier for them to bear.
Right. Great thoughts. And another thing that we would encourage ourselves and you to do is ask yourself, who in your world right now do you see already doing this, already taking responsibility for other people, and add, maybe, do we sit down and ask them how they're doing it?
One of the things I do in my work environment, if I see a leader I admire, I see them being successful, they're doing something really well, they have a skill I'm interested in. How did you get that skill and grow that skill? I'll go, can we have a cup of coffee? I see you doing this really well, and I'd just like to ask you some questions about it. So you have a conversation with someone.
You're networking so that you can grow.
You're finding a successful leader and networking with them so you can take tools they have in their toolbox
Put them in your own.
and put them in your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, who is someone in your world you see taking responsibility for others, doing that very well, that perhaps you could sit down and just have a conversation with? Yeah.
And then I think thirdly is just that both of these things in a nutshell, really, you really want to find a leadership partner. We talked about that since what, episode
Yeah.
2?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just finding a leadership partner, someone through which you can continue to network with. And I want to add to this, you probably already have. If you haven't, you will. You'll bump into leaders in your own life, your own spheres, who you will take things from and leave things. Right?
Yeah.
Or it'll just be simple as, I like the way Bill has conversations with people. I like the way this other leader over here composes his emails. I like how this leader, she has a really good way of showing up and being punctual, and then making sure that everyone's taken care of.
Someone over here inspires people really well.
Inspires, and you're
Yeah.
going to take these different things. And so what that does is it takes our minds off of title.
It does.
It's like, I need this authority to be able to lead people.
Right.
It just puts this whole mindset into a place of growth.
Yeah.
And then really, I think that at the end of the day, you'll find yourself in a position where you're like, wasn't expecting this job title, right? But it's because you're not focused on the title.
Yeah. If you need a title to be a leader, you're in leadership for the wrong
Wrong
reasons. Yeah.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts, Bill?
No, in terms of finding a partner, I would just say, people in the snowmobile world like to get together in clubs. People
do.
get together in chess clubs, and people of like-mindedness will hang out with each other because it will rub off.
Yes.
It will put gas in the tank to help you keep moving forward down the leadership journey. So I would say there is huge, huge value in finding a leader, a partner that you can share the journey with. Maybe not someone in your organization,
Right.
but someone who has a leadership role that you can share stories, get advice, get their take, their input on. So yeah, find a partner. Find a partner.
Good. Again, no title needed to lead others.
Indeed.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Value Added Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.